Chapter 7. I fell into a routine more quickly than I expected given how vast the change in my lifestyle. Each morning I woke before dawn, washed in the basin, and went downstairs to find bread and tea already laid out on the table. I ate alone. The others in the house kept irregular hours, and I rarely saw more than one or two of them at any given time. After breakfast I went to the outbuilding at the back of the property. It had been converted into a workspace, insulated against the cold and fitted with generators that hummed constantly in the background. Inside, Anna was always already there, seated in front of a bank of screens that flickered with lines of code and data streams I could not begin to comprehend. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled back and a face that showed little expression beyond concentration. She barely acknowledged me when I arrived each morning, only gesturing to a chair beside her and continuing her work. The screens meant nothing to me. Columns of numbers scrolled past, punctuated by symbols and abbreviations that belonged to a language I had never learned. I watched them for the first few days, feeling useless, until Anna began to translate. "This is a registry query," she said one morning, pointing to a section of code. "It's searching for classifications flagged in the last 30 days. I leaned closer. Buried in the incomprehensible text were fragments I recognized. District codes. Facility designations. The same patterns I had seen in reports for years, only now stripped down to their raw data. "Show me the classification codes," I said. She adjusted something on the screen, and a list appeared. I scanned it, finding DPM near the bottom. Beside it were others I had approved without question. DPL, DPH, DPR. "What do you need to know?" I asked. Anna looked at me properly for the first time. "Which ones get pulled for manual review? Which ones move through automatically? Where the triggers are?" I studied the list. DPM and DPR are flagged for secondary verification if the processing window exceeds 96 hours. DPH goes straight through unless there's a compliance issue already logged against the district. DPL is the lowest priority, gets processed in bulk at month end. She nodded, fingers already moving across the keyboard. "That means we can adjust DPL records without risk for 3 weeks. DPH only if the district is clean. DPM and DPR are too visible. Unless you keep the processing window under 4 days," I said. Her hands paused. She turned to look at me. "You're certain?" "I processed thousands of them," I replied. 96 hours was the threshold. Anything longer triggered a review. She went back to the screen, making adjustments I couldn't follow. "That changes things," she said quietly. From then on, the work settled into a pattern. Anna would show me fragments of the system, pieces she had pulled from the registry or intercepted from internal communications. I would identify the procedures behind them, the bureaucratic rules that governed how information moved through the system, and when it attracted attention, I told her which changes would look like errors and which would look like tampering. I explained how audits were conducted, what got examined and what got overlooked. I described the rhythms of the administration, the times when scrutiny increased and when it relaxed. She took everything I said and turned it into action, altering records, rerouting notifications, creating gaps in the data that would go unnoticed because they followed the system's own logic. By evening I was exhausted, not from physical effort but from the mental strain of reconstructing procedures I had once followed without thought. I returned to the house, ate whatever had been left in the kitchen, and went upstairs to sleep. The others in the house remained distant. I saw them occasionally, passing in the hallway or working quietly in other rooms, but no one spoke beyond brief nods of acknowledgement. I didn't know their names or what they did. I assumed they didn't know mine either. One evening I mentioned this to Anna as we finished for the day. She glanced up from the screen, her expression unchanged. "No one knows much about anyone here," she said. "It's safer that way." "Does that work?" I asked. She shrugged. "There are always rumors," she said. "People guess. But guessing isn't the same as knowing." I thought about that as I walked back to the house. It was the same principle I had lived by for years, only now applied in reverse. Keep compartments separate. Limit what anyone can confirm. Protect the system by fragmenting it. The irony was not lost on me. That night I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, just as I had on the first night. The hurt I felt over Margaret's silence had not faded, but it had become something I could carry without it consuming me. I understood why she had done it, even if I couldn't reconcile myself to it. And every day I sat with Anna, translating the system I had once served into tools for dismantling it. The work gave me purpose, but it didn't give me peace. Anna brought it up one morning as I sat down beside her. "You need a name," she said without looking up from the screen. "People are starting to ask." I hadn't thought about it. Ronald Harker was dead, drowned in the river, and I'd been living with that fact without considering what replaced it. "Something plain," Anna continued. "Nothing that stands out. Think of something you'd forget." I considered it for a moment. "Thomas," I said. "Thomas Clark." She nodded once. "That works." She typed something into one of her files. "Tom Clark." Done. That was all it took. 53 years of identity reduced to a decision made in seconds and logged into a document I'd never see. The name felt odd for the first few days, like clothing that didn't quite fit. But it served its purpose. When people addressed me in passing, they used it without hesitation, and I answered to it because there was no other option. 3 weeks in, I came into the kitchen late one evening. Most of the house had already eaten, and the room was empty except for the warmth still radiating from the aga. I lifted the lid on the pot of stew keeping warm on the hot plate and ladled some into a bowl. The smell reminded me briefly of Margaret's cooking, and I pushed the thought aside before it could settle. I had just turned towards the table when the door slammed open behind me. I barely had time to register the movement before hands grabbed my shoulders and spun me around. The bowl fell, stew spattering across the flagstones. A fist caught me hard in the stomach, doubling me over, and then something struck the side of my head. I staggered back against the aga, pain flaring sharp and immediate. A voice was shouting, close and raw with fury. "You bastard! You absolute bastard!" I tried to raise my hands, but another blow caught me across the jaw. My vision blurred. I recognized the man dimly, someone I'd seen around the house but never spoken to. Doug, I thought his name was. "Where is she?" He had me by the collar now, shaking me. "Where's Lindsay? Where did they take her?" I couldn't answer. My head rang and my knees threatened to give out. He shook me again, harder. "They told me you were one of them. A company man. You signed the orders. You sent her away." He pulled me forward and slammed me back against the stove. The heat seared through my shirt. I gasped, tried to twist away, but his grip held firm. "Tell me where she is." I had no idea who Lindsay was. I had no idea what he wanted me to say. My mouth opened but nothing came out except a choked sound that might have been a denial or just shock. He drew his fist back again. I braced for the impact. It didn't come. Doug's leg buckled suddenly. He lurched sideways, his grip on my shirt releasing as he fell. Anna stood behind him, one hand still clutching the back of his collar. As he crumpled, she pulled hard on it, yanking him backwards. He hit the floor hard, breath leaving him in a grunt. "Out," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. She stepped past him and took my arm. "Now." I stumbled along trying to keep up with her, legs unsteady. Behind us Doug was already pushing himself up, shouting something I couldn't make out through the ringing in my ears. Anna didn't look back. She pulled me through the hallway and out the side door into the cold night air. We crossed the yard to the outbuilding. She pushed the door open, guided me inside, and shut it behind us. The sudden quiet felt almost as disorienting as the attack had been. "Sit," she said, pointing to the chair I usually occupied. I lowered myself into it carefully. Everything hurt. My jaw throbbed, my back burned where it had pressed against the aga, and my head felt like it had been split open. Anna moved to a cabinet in the corner and returned with a first aid kit. She pulled a second chair over and sat down facing me. "Let me see." I turned my head. She examined the side where I'd been hit, her touch clinical and detached. You'll have a bruise. Nothing broken. She opened the kit and pulled out antiseptic and gauze. Shirt off. I fumbled with the buttons, fingers clumsy. She waited, then helped when it became clear I wasn't managing. The fabric peeled away from the burn on my back and I hissed through my teeth. Could be worse, she said. She cleaned it efficiently, applied something that stung, and taped a dressing over it. Doug lost his daughter 2 months ago. 14 years old. Swept up in a relocation. He doesn't know where she went. I sat there, absorbing that. 2 months. That meant it had happened while I was still at my desk, still signing authorizations without questioning them. It might have been one I approved. He thinks I sent her, I said quietly. He thinks the system sent her, Anna replied. You were part of it. Close enough. She finished with the dressing and packed the kit away. When she turned back, she said, as I said, rumors get around, no matter how hard we might try to prevent them. This won't be the last time someone connects you to what happened to their family. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking slightly. I hadn't been in a fight since I was a child, always the one getting knocked down, never the one who could defend himself. It had all come back in an instant, that helplessness. But what stayed with me wasn't the pain or the fear. It was Doug's voice, raw and desperate. Where is she? I thought of the quarterly report I'd reviewed not so long ago. District 7 East. 1,847 dependents in March. 1,604 in June. 220 children unaccounted for. I'd submitted a query. It had been withdrawn. And I'd let it go because challenging the system felt more dangerous than ignoring what I'd seen. Those children had gone somewhere. Lindsay had gone somewhere. And men like me had made it possible by signing the papers and not asking questions. I'm here to stop it happening again, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. That's what I'm doing. Anna studied me for a moment longer, then nodded once. Good, she said. Then let's get back to work tomorrow. By the way, how did you get him to let me go? Maybe I need to brush up on my self-defense strategy. She almost smiled. It's only something you can do if you're behind someone, grab their collar, kick them in the back of the knee, yank them backwards. Thank you for rescuing me. You're welcome. Get to bed. We have a lot of work to do tomorrow. I didn't sleep well. The burn on my back kept pulling me awake whenever I shifted position, and my jaw ached with a dull persistence that made rest impossible. By the time dawn broke, I'd already given up and was sitting at the small desk by the window, watching the yard lighten below. The door to the outbuilding opened, and Anna crossed towards the main house. She moved with purpose, shoulders hunched against the cold. A moment later she emerged again, this time carrying a mug in each hand, and disappeared back inside. I dressed carefully, avoiding anything that might irritate the dressing on my back, and made my way downstairs. The kitchen was empty. Someone had left bread and jam on the table, but I couldn't summon much appetite and only managed a little dry bread. Then I crossed the yard to my current workplace. Anna looked up when I entered. She gestured to the second mug on the desk beside her. Thought you'd be early. Yes. I couldn't sleep. Doug's gone, she said. Left before sunrise. He won't be back. I sat down, wincing as the chair pressed against my back. Did they send him away? He left on his own. He knows he crossed a line. She turned back to the screen. No one blames him for what he feels, but we can't have people acting on it. Not here. I picked up the mug and held it between my hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. How many others are there? People who've lost someone because of what I authorized? Here? 3, maybe 4. In the wider network. She shrugged. More than you want to know about. The tea tasted bitter. I drank it anyway. Does it help? I asked. What we're doing. Does it make a difference? Anna stopped typing. She didn't turn around, but her hand stilled on the keyboard. Last month we moved 47 people out of districts flagged for clearance. The month before, 31. This month we're on track for 60. And the ones we don't reach, they go wherever the system sends them. She resumed typing. We can't save everyone. We can only save the ones we reach in time. I put the mug down. 60 people. Against how many thousands processed through facilities like RT7 each month? The numbers didn't balance. They never would. But 60 people who wouldn't disappear into the registry's classifications. 60 names that wouldn't become discrepancies in a quarterly report. Anna pulled up a new screen. I need you to look at something. I leaned forward, forcing myself to focus. The data resolved into a familiar pattern: transport authorizations, district codes, processing windows. We've been rerouting notifications for District 12 North, she said. Intercepting the alerts before they reach regional administration. But the volume's increasing. They're scheduling sweeps every 23 days now instead of monthly. I scanned the figures. It does look as if they're accelerating the program. We suspected. Can you confirm it? I traced the pattern back through the months. The intervals had shortened gradually, so gradually that anyone reviewing the data in isolation wouldn't notice. But laid out in sequence, the trend was unmistakable. It's deliberate, I said. They're increasing throughput. Testing capacity, maybe, or responding to quotas from higher up. Anna's expression didn't change, but her fingers moved faster across the keyboard. If they're accelerating, we need to adjust our timing. We've been working on a 2-week window. That won't hold. 10 days, I said. You'll need to move people within 10 days of the initial notice. She nodded, already making notes. That cuts our margin significantly. It's the only way to stay ahead of the reviews. We worked through the rest of the morning in near silence, breaking only when Anna went to refill our mugs. The data streamed past, endless columns of classifications and authorizations that had once represented nothing more than administrative procedure. Now each line carried weight. Each code was a person, a family, a child who might or might not reach safety depending on whether we identified them in time. My back throbbed. My jaw ached. And Doug's voice echoed in my head. Where is she? I couldn't answer that question. Not for his daughter, not for the 220 children from District 7 East, not for any of the thousands who had passed through the system under my watch. But I could make certain fewer people had to ask it. Anna closed one of the screens and opened another. There's something else, she said. We've picked up chatter about a new facility. No designation yet, but the transport authorization suggests it's larger than RT7. My chest tightened. Where? Northern sector. Beyond the industrial zone. She pulled up a map. Here. Construction started 3 months ago. I stared at the location marker. 3 months. While I'd been sitting in my office, while I'd been processing reports and signing authorizations, they'd been building something new. Something larger. What's its capacity? Unknown. But if the transport schedules are accurate, they're planning for at least 500 units. 500 units. The number sat there between us, too large to absorb properly. We need to know what it's for, Anna said. I nodded, though I suspected I already knew. The registry didn't build facilities that large for temporary processing. Whatever was being constructed in the northern sector, it was designed for permanence. I'll need access to the construction authorizations, I said. Project codes, budget allocations, anything that shows the intended function. I can get those. She made another note. It'll take a few days. Then we wait. She glanced at me. You should rest. Your back needs time. I'm fine. You're not. And we can't afford to have you collapse. She closed the remaining screens. Go. I'll call you if something urgent comes through. I wanted to argue, but the exhaustion settling over me made it pointless. I stood carefully, feeling every bruise Doug had left, and made my way back to the house. Upstairs, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling again. The burn on my back pulsed in time with my heartbeat. Somewhere beyond these walls, the system continued its work, processing people through facilities whose purposes I'd never questioned, moving them along routes I'd authorized without hesitation. And somewhere, Margaret was maintaining the fiction of widowhood, playing her part in a system she'd been working against long before I'd understood what it truly was. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow I'd return to the screens, to the codes and classifications, to the work of dismantling what I'd helped build. Today, I let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. And what I couldn't undo. The weeks passed. I settled into the rhythm of the work, though to settled suggested a comfort that never quite arrived. Each evening I ascended the stairs, taking them two at a time now without the breathlessness that used to plague me, only to descend in the mornings to eat standing by the kitchen window. The softness around my middle had disappeared. My trousers hung loose. I'd had to punch new holes in my belt. Physical labor filled the hours between sessions with Anna. Splitting wood, hauling supplies, repairing fence posts. The work left me tired in a way I'd never experienced behind a desk, but it also left me sharper. My body remembered what it had been before decades of sitting had reduced it to something merely functional. Sometimes children appeared in the yard, shepherded quickly inside by women whose names I didn't know. I watched from the outbuilding window, never approaching, never interfering. They vanished within hours, moved along routes I wasn't told about, to destinations I couldn't name. That was safer for everyone. Without looking up from her screen, Anna said, "A woman and her daughter came looking for you last week." Carefully, I put the mug I'd been holding down, before I dropped it. Looking for me. Looking for Ronald Harker. I told them there was no one here by that name. She typed something, deleted it, typed again. That's true, isn't it? They left. Margaret. And Linda. Presumably. My throat tightened. Did they say anything else? Just asked if we'd seen anyone matching your description. Anna's tone remained neutral. I said we hadn't. I picked up the mug again and stared into it. Margaret knew I was alive. She'd left me the note, the supplies, the instructions that had, eventually, brought me here. But she couldn't know where I here was now, couldn't confirm I'd made it after we'd pulled off the child heist. She and Linda must have been feeling frantic to actually call around here, and maybe other places, too. Looking for me. And I'd done nothing. I'd sent no message, no sign, no confirmation that I'd survived beyond that first night. Should I have? I began. No. Anna's voice cut across mine. You did the right thing. Contact creates risk. They know you're somewhere. That's more than enough for now. Unless you want more, of course. I wanted to argue, but she was right. Ronald Harker had drowned in the river. Tom Clark existed only in the margins, useful precisely because he connected to nothing and no one. Any attempt to reach my family, who still had to live in the outside world of the regime, would threaten that. It didn't make me feel better about not getting in touch. But I didn't really want to, either. I hadn't got over feeling hurt and betrayed by my family. The days blurred together after that. More screens, more classifications, more careful alterations to records that would save people I'd never meet. The work mattered. I knew it mattered. 60 people this month. Perhaps 70 next month. But I couldn't stop thinking about the 220 children from District 7 East. Or Lindsay. Doug's daughter. 14 years old. Swept up while I'd been signing authorizations without reading them properly. At night I lay awake and saw their faces, imagined faces, constructed from memory and guilt. Children processed through RTR7 under classifications I'd approved. DPM dependence, priority minimal. Facility capacity, 190 units. Processing window, 72 hours. What happened after 72 hours? Where did they go when RT7 reached capacity? I didn't know. I'd never asked. Doug had asked. Doug had demanded an answer, his hands on my collar, his voice breaking. Where is she? And I'd had nothing to tell him. The guilt sat heavy, constant. Not the sharp pain it had been in the beginning, but a dull ache that colored everything. I carried it to the outbuilding each morning, worked through it while Anna showed me endless streams of data, brought it back to my room each night. One evening I found myself standing in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed. The house was silent. I'd come down for water and stayed, staring at nothing, thinking about Doug. He'd left because of me. Because he'd lost control and attacked someone he blamed for his daughter's disappearance. And he'd been right to blame me. Not entirely right. I hadn't personally ordered Lindsay's relocation, hadn't known her name or her face, but right enough. I'd been part of the system that took her. I'd made that system function. Doug was gone now. Sent away or left on his own, it didn't matter. He'd crossed a line, Anna had said. But the real line was the one I'd crossed years ago without noticing, when I decided that signing forms was just administrative work, just keeping things orderly. It was just me doing my job.